Thanks, George. So I'm Matt Topper, as George said, president of Ubereater, and today I'm here to talk to you all about identity security, the foundation for zero trust. So who's Ubereater? Who am I? So simply put, we allow organizations to do more faster securely. For the last decade, we've been building identity and access management solutions across the federal government. That's what we do. It's what we specialize in. And really where our team's heart and soul lives, eats, and breathes every day. And we'll get into a little bit more about that later and how we're a little bit different than most organizations. So zero trust has been truly on everybody's mind across the federal government. The executive order earlier this year forced it to be put in the front of everyone's plans. Whether you're the CISO, the director, everyone across the organization is talking about zero trust, how it's going to help us continue to work from home, how it's going to help us better secure our organizations with the rapid amount of breaches we've seen in the last year, everything from solar winds all the way down to pipelines preventing us from getting gas on a Tuesday. And zero trust isn't easy. We can see, I call this the fan diagram. I'm leaving out probably 80% of the vendors that play in this space. And CISA has done a great job trying to bring this down from some other models that have 7, 8, 9. I've even seen 12 pillars across zero trust. But they brought it down to 5 really focused pillars around zero trust and building a maturity model out of that. So what I'm here to talk about today is why identity is that foundation and why that's what organizations should be focusing on first, because it truly does set the foundation for every other pillar moving forward. So, let's roll through these 5 pillars real quick. So first off, the identity pillar. I think that's why we're all here this week with SailPoint and this conference. Right? We realize the benefit and value that it brings to the organizations we support. You don't wake up and just get on the network every day, right? You stick your card into a machine, right? We all have these in the federal government space, and while they're secure, they're not secure enough anymore. Right? We've seen other factors with our phones, with identity, biometrics, with facial recognition, fingerprints, but also behavior patterns. Right? A lot of times these attackers have the usernames and passwords, or they do have the CAC cards, the PIV cards, because somebody dropped it on the street and had a sticky note on the back with their PIN. And you can stick it in a machine and get access. Well, that shouldn't happen anymore. And identity is the first thing that controls that for us. And through these 6 functions that CISA really well defined for us, and if you haven't read the zerotrust.cyber.gov papers, they really go into that deep maturity model of how do we evaluate ourselves and how mature we are and how far we are into our zero trust journey. But as we roll through, that authentication has to change. And not only are we authenticating the humans and the people behind our keyboards, but also the devices. So, and a lot of times we haven't done a good job marrying those two together. So most of the identity tactics moving forward allow you to take that card, but then also associate it to the device. And that device now becomes your identity that's locked, whether that's through WebAuthn, FIDO UTF, whether that's through certificates on the machines and authenticating kind of twice. That's really the new authentication. And then we drive that down not only from the humans, their devices, but to the networks. The networks have to identify themselves through mutual TLS tokens. The applications, the data layers below that, right, all the way down the stack, all of these things have identity that need to be governed and managed, and their relationships, right? The we see a lot of discussion at the network layer right now about micro segmentation and building these small, I call them Lego pieces around each of our applications of, okay, what is this application and what is all of the pieces together that application talks to for itself, as well as what it's allowed to talk across the network to other applications to pull data. Guess what? That's identity. That credential that is rotating, if you're using a Kubernetes, Istio, Fishy Spire type environment, right? That certificate that's rotating every 60 to 90 minutes, that's identity. That's controlled through the same style, not necessarily always the exact same one, certificate authorities that we use today. And the policies that let those things talk to each other, the policies that define maybe not always the full micro segmentation piece, but what they're allowed to talk to across the network, that's identity. So we'll get into that a little bit more. Identity stores, again, not only the identities of the people, but the devices as well. And that's, I think, with CDM, in the past, we've done a great job on the user side and bringing that into our authorization decisions, but not always the device side. Risk assessment, this is one of the pieces that I see as the major changes, some of the major benefits we can have moving forward. There are fantastic tools in true, not just the if statements, AI and machine learning that allow us to look at behavior patterns, look at the user and say, hey, this user I trust. They put their PIV card in, they put their PIN in, but I've never seen them on this device before. Right? So I trust the user very, very heavily. That device, I don't manage it, or I do manage it, but they've never used it before. Maybe they left their laptop at home and they've got a loaner for the day. But guess what? I'm not going to trust that natively, right? I'm not going to say that the person, because the person is good, that all the things they can access are good too. And bringing that risk into our authorization and also the behavior patterns, even if it is a trusted user and a trusted device, there's nobody saying that it's not somebody else in their home right now at the keyboard, or it could be their kid or an adversary, right? They could have a IoT device on their home network, right? We've all got Alexas, and I can't say the other word because it's going to beep on my desk right now. Those devices are now on our corporate networks, and we have to look at behaviors of what our trusted devices are doing because those might be affecting it. So that's really where these risk assessments, the user behavior analytics are coming into the identity pillar. Again, right? This is all driving down that context to everything else on the network and what we can and can't see. And then visibility and analytics. So we can have all these policies, but unless we can see when they're being enforced, when they're failing, when behaviors, what people are doing to determine those behaviors that I just talked about, we don't have the ability to pull it off. And then, right, that also allows us to certify that, hey, these people are on the network, or hey, this person's behaving in a way that wasn't enough for our SOC to dig into, but their behavior pattern's enough that we're going to tell whoever's listed as their manager. And if it's an employee, right, the manager is normally pretty easy to find. If it's a contractor, we don't traditionally always have that data about who the contract owner is or the contract owner representative, and bringing that data in from a governance capability really is key to what we're doing. And then the automation of orchestration. So as we move across these networks, as we, in identity, control these policy decision points across the board, we own the policies. Some of the nice benefits of some of the newer policy engines is we can say, here's a policy that is set by the federal government, right? That might be GSA, that might be OMB, right? Those policy bundles can be pushed down across the entire federal government or within your organization, across the entire organization. You can write a policy that says at your network layer, if that application doesn't appear in your configuration management database, in your ITSM system, they're not allowed on the network, right? That's putting those policies at a different level, but still centralizing them. And that automation, that distribution, when a new policy bundle comes out, when a new set of attributes come down, when a new risk indicator comes down that needs to modify those policies, right? That's all of the strong automation orchestration within identity that we're seeing now. We're really changing the way people are able to do zero trust in the future. So as you can tell, identity identifies everything from the person to the devices to the applications. And if we don't get this right and do it first in a holistic fashion, then yeah, we all have to mature and it has to be a journey, but it has to be the first thing you do. And I'm going to dig in through the rest of this as to why that's the case. So again, identity is the foundation and it supports all of the remaining pillars. Without identity, remaining pillars become ineffective. I see a lot of organizations today jumping on the SASE or the software-defined networks because they can understand, oh, it's just a new replacement for the VPN. If that's the way you're treating it, you're going to have the same problems that we have with the VPN. And microsegmentation without identifying the user, without identifying the device, and understanding that identity and device JOT token in most cases that's coming down. Without it, we're going to have the same problems, and you're wasting your time and money. I know that's hard because these topics are hard to talk about. These topics are hard to get buy-in and get the organizations to understand, but I think it's easy to draw that parallel, especially on the network and VPN side. So let's talk about the device. I dove into this a little bit too much already, so we'll probably move through these, but right, that device can be an IoT device. It can be a mobile phone. It can be a laptop. It can be a server. Right? We should be able to say, I'm on vacation, or, hey, I'm working from home. I left my laptop back at the house, but I still need to get into the network. Or, hey, I had my federal GFE at this place, but I'm on vacation. I need to work because we can do that now. My kid spilled water all over my laptop. I need to run to Best Buy and get a new one. Right? We should be able to say, put in the PIV card, put in the CAC card. I've never seen this device before. I'm going to run you through a human identity proofing verification, right? Which GSA is setting up a fantastic service for that, which if you haven't looked at, please talk to Phil Lamb and get on the bandwagon because no one wants that PII on their own. But right, strongly assert who I am, bring in additional factors to prove that I'm really behind this keyboard, even though you don't know the device, and give me that ability to get on the network and maybe not get all the data I have if it's a trusted managed device, but enough that I can continue doing my job. So identity, right? Compliance monitoring, all of those attributes about that device, whether it's a known device we protect, whether it's compromised, not compromised, right? If a new 0-day comes out and says, hey, we got to patch the version of, well, we'll just pick on Java because that's one of my favorites. That's on everything below 18.02. We literally write an access policy that says, hey, call back to the device management utility, look at the software that's on there. If Java is below this, they're not allowed on, right? Our access control mechanisms say that person's good, that device isn't good. Until that registry tells me that that's been updated, you don't get access to anything considered sensitive. And that might even include email, right? That's identity. Data access, right? Those policy decisions, bringing in the attributes about the users, bringing in the attributes about the devices, the context of those devices, right? We might allow you, based on your PIV, based on your laptop, that's your GFE, to access all the data in the world. But if it's not from your home location that you've come from for the last 60 days, the risk on that device might be higher. And it should be. Or, hey, you've got files on that device, but right now you're not in the United States. You're in Canada. You're in China, right? You might have that data. It might be encrypted, but because of the context of where you are and the behaviors you've shown, we're not going to let you open it anymore, or at least until you get back home. Right? That's some of the power that identity gives us with our devices. So networking environment, I did touch on this one as well. Right? That whole idea of network segmentation. Identity has changed, as I said, right? We've got now our tokens identifying not only the person, but also their device. And with that comes encrypted attribute bundles and encrypted roles and groups from an enterprise layer, as well as down to the networks you're trying to attach to. We've worked with a vendor, AppGate, a lot lately on this, and they quickly realized that they can't make any decisions about the network segmentation, about the micro-segmentation, about what applications, about what data without identity. And they look to those tokens to do the course level. And then when you go down to an individual app level or an individual segment of the network, right? If we're doing multi-level, they're reaching out to us on the identity side to better identify and get additional attributes that maybe are a little too sensitive to put in the front end tokens. Additionally, with the way we're writing policies for the policy decision points, right? In the past, in identity, we've talked a lot about XACML. Nothing's ever dead in identity. SAML was called dead 10 years ago. It still runs the world, but I believe XACML is going to fall off pretty quickly here, and it's going to be replaced with a new policy language called Rego and enforced with something called OPA, the Open Policy Agent. And that already has taken over the Kubernetes world. It has now started coming out into our network devices, our traditional Apaches and Nginx's, IIS reverse proxy application servers of the world. But the nice thing about that is it rides outside of the application, and we can push those policies down to say, all right, if this application, if this server, if this namespace isn't in our ITSM system, they can't even get an IP address. All right, let's start there. Okay, now that we know who that user and that device are talking to, well, if that application doesn't have encryption or it's got an expired certificate, it's not getting on the network, right? And that's all policy controlled by identity, not about the user and the device, but about the application and service, right? So again, identity owns and it doesn't own. It augments everything we do in networking environment. I'm an identity guy. I'm biased. I get it. And then again, automation and orchestration. So if we do have a new OMB policy, a new executive order that says, hey, if X level of sensitive data, right, that can be HR data, that could be PII, that could be PHI, that could be classified data. Right? If new directives come out that say you can't get this from a non-government issued device, right? Today, implementing those policies are really, really coarse, to say the least, right? We can now take that all the way down to an application layer through automation and orchestration. We can sign those policy bundles centrally. So we can actually say, this is an OMB policy, or this is an organization-wide policy. It is signed, encrypted, just like we're talking about doing with the software bill of materials that are coming from vendors after the SolarWinds hack, right? And some of that supply chain problem. We can also define the supply chains and sign all of our policies that are going in. And that works today. And if you don't have a bundled policy that is signed by the organization, or someone has tried to put a policy bundle in place that isn't coming from your authoritative source, it won't even start, right? That gets checked at the application layer and gets checked at the network layer. So you got to compromise the entire supply chain and fake a lot of stuff along the way to get past it. So application workload, pillar 4, and I got to roll through this because I know we're coming close on time here, and I appreciate everybody joining this fire hose approach today. With pillar 4, application workload, that's traditionally what we think as an identity component. But this is really changing as we're moving forward, right? We've always had those reverse proxies, those identity providers within our environment that then talk to our service providers, whether that's through OAuth, OpenID Connect, SAML. Right? Those are the tokens that are typically carried across our networks. In some cases, we're still running with headers. Let's please try and kill that in the next 5 years, if at all possible. If you need help, please let me know. That is probably one of our biggest risks right now across the government. But right, that central management of the policies, the attributes, the identities, the bundles that are signed and sent to our policy decision points now as we move forward, right? All of that signing I talked about on the network layer also is coming down to the application layer, right? And making that determination of, okay, this application belongs to this microsegment, how that pops up to your secure service edge, your SASE solutions, your, right, as I called them before, your new VPN replacements, but also bringing the context of how those people, how their devices, their behaviors are coming down, go right into the application, so that we might have a policy that says, it's great, you're on a GFE, you're using your PIV card. So we've got strong assertion that you are who you say you are through your person and through your device. We've seen you coming from that IP before, but you're about to go change where you get paid, right? So this isn't even to an application. This isn't an individual function within the application, right? You're going to go change your routing information. Well, guess what? This is one of the biggest ways hackers get paid today. They go into the HR system, compromise one account, and they move it. And guess what? 10 days, a couple grand shows up in their account, and then they move it out and disappear. So when that happens, we have the ability to say, well, I understand who you are, I understand your device, but I'm going to throw you through an identity proof or make you assert you've got control of email, or put in a FIDO token, or tell me what your current mortgage payment looks like, which, right, I said GSA is putting that service together for it. Right, those are the abilities we have today. Or even, hey, I don't have access to this data. Call my identity governance system in something like SailPoint and put me to the exact screen, the exact role as to what I need to request to get access to this. Or go send them over to SailPoint, or call SailPoint and pop it up in the application. Lots of ways to pull this off, but it says, hey, you're trying to get access to this data. You don't have access, but if you get this different attribute, if you take this training from a just-in-time perspective, we can give you this more. This is something we did years ago within the IC of, hey, here's the data you can see today, but if you take this training, you get right into this program, you go ask this person for additional access and they think you need it, right? The need to know problem. Like, there's 5,000 more items you could be researching on. And here's how to get there. And right, there's discussions on discoverability, whether that's good or bad. But the fact we can easily do that today is truly a game changer for Zero Trust moving forward. And again, bringing in that user behavior analytics capability of, hey, you normally download 5 docs from this today. Or today you downloaded 50. Right? That's probably a little out of norm. Let's tell your boss, you downloaded 500. We're going to throw the kill switch. And the user behavior tool will tell our identity authentication authorization device, kill that token. We've kicked off a whole bunch of playbooks in the SOC to figure out what's going on here. But for right now, we're going to temporarily lock this user out and throw the full kill switch. And that's something we are doing with customers in production today. And we're not chasing that, right? Mythical, if somebody's in our network for 18 minutes, they own it. That we've all stood by the last 10 years, that's been the pillar. And then lastly, the data pillar. So, right, a lot of times we stop the applications at the data tier, or I'm sorry, stop the policies at the app tier. But again, it goes down, it should continue down to the data. Those tokens that are going from your desktop to the network edge devices, your SASE devices, to your applications, also get chained and added. This is great. Matt should have access to this data, but he's coming through that application, and that application, because of various reasons, doesn't get access to that data. So even though Matt has the ability to see it, we're not going to return it. Or, hey, Matt's coming through that application, but because he's coming through this physical location in the world, he's not going to get access to that. Or he's outside of our corporate network, he's not going to get access to that right now, right? And that gives us that just in time, just enough access based on the user context of not only them, the device, as well as the location in the world that they're coming from, right? So all of that orchestration, automation carries all the way down. It's all identity driven. So, wow, that's a lot, right? It's pretty simple. Maybe we should be done in 6 months. I mean, that's at least what our C-levels are telling us. No, it's not. And then we start adding on to it a lot more other things. Rapidly changing regulations, right? We've seen the privacy laws really take off in Europe. California is starting to push them here. We might have different privacy laws depending on the state level. And depending on what your organization does, that affects you, right? We see this as the first step to zero trust. That's what we're talking about today. Identity is becoming more complex. Not only, we talked a lot about the human side today, but we also have a lot of identity to do on the machine-to-machine side and the application-to-application side. And what happens when our applications start talking across agency borders as APIs, right? Those things all have identities. And when we talked about those tokens coming through all the way down to our app layers, well, what happens when those applications are residing outside of our network boundaries, coming through another agency or coming through another country that we trust, right? All of this has to tier all the way through. We have to be able to reach back. Yes, it's hard pretty quick. And they're looking to us to move to the cloud, multiple cloud providers. Most organizations have 2, if not 3 at this point, plus their on-premises data centers, plus their multi-generational IT from the last 30 plus years. Oh yeah, and then we're also the first pivot after the breach. I don't care how you get breached, it's gonna happen. But guess what? The first thing they're going afterwards is our identity and access management systems, because they know today that's what gives them the keys to the kingdom, right? You look at SolarGate, SolarWinds, the first thing they went after was the identity providers. They changed the tokens. They stole the tokens. They took the private keys and put them on a different IDP that they controlled, right? That's what they did. They tried to compromise accounts. They created root accounts, gave themselves a whole bunch of other accounts with the same permissions, got rid of root. Guess what? A lot of times it didn't get caught for a long time, right? That's because we didn't have our SIMs hooked up to our identity systems, right? And that's what that user behavior analytics gives us. Our own organization challenges, right? Agility, right? We need to move faster. Finding these people that know identity and access management isn't easy. Finding the budget to do this isn't easy either. The tools, the infrastructure, the resources, and the integrations all cost a lot of time and money. There's a lot of orgs we've seen that they haven't delivered anything of value after buying these products for 18 months. That's crazy. Could you imagine? I mean, we have to do it all the time right now, right? Going to the C-level and say, that's great. You just spent how many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on this, and it's been a year and we don't have anything to show for it. Sadly, that's been the history of identity, right? The repeatability, the long-term, right? A lot of times we see, because these deployments are manual, but because the configurations are manual, within 2 to 3 years, the stability is not there. The trust in the system starts to fall because, oh yeah, that server crashes every third day, or oh yeah, for some reason we're getting this weird behavior on that one server in the cluster, not the others, because we're manually, in a lot of cases, pushing that up, and that configuration drift is killing us. Right? We need to still innovate. We've got all these new services coming online, right? It's hard in identity right now. So with the few minutes we've got left here, I want to talk about something that we've just released. And we call it IAM Orchestrated, that helps address a lot of these problems that we've seen over the last 10 years in the federal government. So out of the box, what it provides you is a highly mature identity and access management system from some of the best of breed vendors out there, pre-integrated and tailored for the federal government. Right? We have authentication, PIV, CAC, X509, as well as FIDO and U2F and WebAuthn built in from day one. We've extended the master user record that a lot of organizations have already adopted to bring in some of the additional attributes, extended the master device record to bring in some of those additional context attributes, built in all of the reporting for the risk assessments, built in the user behavior analytics to sit on top of your existing SIM tools, whether that's Splunk or ArcSight or QRadar, right? But instead of looking at it at a box level, looking at it from a human identity level, watching and changing those logs to say, hey, here's where Matt logged in first today. And here's everywhere he went. And every time he sudoed into a higher level account or became an administrator, or even just all the apps he took and where that went down the data, because we're chaining those identity tokens all the way through. And we're pulling in that SOC data, the SIM data, in a real-time basis. We have that visibility and can make real-time decisions based on the context and behaviors of what people are doing. That's today out of the box as part of the platform of what we provide. Visibility and analytics. Not only do we have that visibility, but we also have the documentation, the reporting, the certifications, the validation of, hey, this person hasn't logged in 30 days. Send them an email, bug them, another 7 days, bug their manager. And after that, we turn it off, or we have the manager have to give it some kind of override. Maybe they're on TDY. All of that's built in. The, hey, this person is the contracting officer on this contract, or the contracting officer representative, but they just turned in their resignation. Tell the HR or tell the contracts team that this is about to be an empty slot, or hey, that person's already gone. That slot is empty, right? This is all built in out of the box with the platform we have today. I talked a lot about the new policy decision points. I talked about OPA and REGO. We also talked a little bit about Spiffy and Spire from the mutual TLS perspective between all of our services. We've baked that in as well. It doesn't have to be new infrastructure with Kubernetes and be all fancy cloud. It works on what you have today. And then, of course, more of the governance with SailPoint. So trusted vendors that a lot of us know and love. A lot of these are already in our organizations today. We just saw too many times government agencies, commercial organizations were buying these products and taking way too long to integrate them together, way too long to see the value. The same things were being done at different customers in different ways, which made supporting repeatability, consistency, the ability to actually bring in new features a lot harder. So we worked with these vendors to say, here's where your interfaces stink. Here's where SailPoint and Exabeam don't talk together, or where SailPoint and CyberArk, yeah, there's an integration there, but it doesn't work for anyone. Here's how we can do it better. And then, right, extend that beyond the human to the device identities. And you can see Styra here, which is what we're using to govern and manage all of those policies across all of our policy decision points. So the value we're bringing here, and the biggest one I put in the middle for a reason, we've just submitted FedRAMP ready at FedRAMP High, DoD Impact Level 5, and have been sponsored to move ahead directly into in process at that DoD Impact Level 5. So this is a fully integrated system at the highest level of security for the federal government before it leaves the internet. It's all private tenant back into your organization, shared nothing. Your data remains your own. is not commingled. You get your own private account with keys as an organization that you control, that we don't have access to within AWS. Everything we see, you see from an open visibility perspective. And then on top of it all, we have a component library with over 100 documented use cases that talks about the business value, that talks about exactly the workflows that we go through, those secondary and third level use cases of, hey, we've got a contractor here, but they're not assigned to a contract. What do you do? Right? They're active, but they're not assigned to anything. Who do we alert? They're active, they're assigned to something, but the contracting officer doesn't work here anymore. How do you handle that? Right? All of those second and third tiers are built in. Are they 100% for your work? Probably not, but they follow the FAR clauses. They've been running in production for, in most cases, at least 3 to 5 years at this point. So we might have to help you tweak 20 to 30% of this, maybe 40%, but you know that code is being reused. And the way we design this, you can also share it with peers. So if you know that you are going down a ServiceNow integration, right? That's your new ITSM solution. That's your new help desk solution. There's 50 other government customers that have done that already. We're going to know who that is and allow, in a controlled environment, through very strong credentials, and we're more than happy to walk through it, that code to be shared. And a lot of times that'll go into our own private or product backlog that you all as customers will vote on the biggest features, the biggest needs across the federal government. It also gives us that way to push policies out across all the organizations, or, hey, here's a really good policy set for that application vendor that is collective across the federal government. So our IAM Automated offering really is the back-end Git environment with all of the integration patterns, with all of the build tools already built in, with all of the artifacts and their deployment, right? That's all signed. That's all using SBOMs, securing the supply chain from the bottom all the way up. All the vulnerability management is on us. And you all can just focus on extending your organizations, checking in code, and driving the value. We'll be there to support your backend, support your developers, getting up to speed quickly on the integrated platform. And then you just focus on moving ahead, right? That's IAM Automated. You can get that. You can take the artifacts and deploy them in your environment if you want. But the real value comes with IAM Orchestrated, where we will run that on your behalf. As I said earlier, it's hard to find identity and access management professionals right now. And most of them don't enjoy the backend patching, upgrading, integration side. And you really don't want them learning on your time and dime. I say to a lot of customers, by the time your resources have read the release notes, we've rolled it out to half a dozen customers already. And we know what's going to break. And because this is an integrated platform, we really know what's going to break because our integration tests will pick that up. So all of that patching, upgraded, vulnerability management is handled by us. And if you need new features, we work on them together as part of the product backlog. All of your peers on the platform also upvote new capabilities, new vendors to integrate in. It should make this all move faster. So that's what we're excited about. That's what we believe will help set the foundation for Zero Trust moving forward, and why identity truly is the foundation of Zero Trust. So again, Matt Topper, president of Ubereater, please feel free to reach out. That is my personal cell phone and email address on the screen. We would love to talk to you more about this, whether it's IAM Automated or identity in general. We're in a point in this country that we can't afford to get this wrong. So I just ask that you let us help you. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference. There's some great content coming up for the rest of the day today, as well as tomorrow. And take care. Bye-bye.